Hello! Welcome to Levels Plus Whenever episode 131. And we're going to be deep diving into a gazillion practically franchises to rank them succinctly. I didn't want this to be a super long video, and the original take was 2.5 hours, so I redid it with a much shorter time frame. Still a little lengthy, but not as long. But I have pickups first. Let's do those. I've got some new games. I've got the North American release of Pateron. Since I couldn't update my Japanese one, I had to buy it again, but I only paid $5 for it thanks to a bunch of Best Buy credit I had. And then I got Persona 3 Reload. It was $25 when I picked up Pateron and Suikoden 1 and 2 Remaster. I'm very pleased to have so many really good role-playing games of my past being resurrected, and I tried to out-reload and Suikoden really quickly this morning, and I'm pretty content with both of them so far. I also got a couple other things. You can see it from your perspective, my left. But here's the other one. I got Goose Socks, and I deliberately got Goose Socks from Untitled Goose Game to have a representative over there on the shelf. And I have an extra one in case something happens to it. I may dye it a little bit darker and have it be the other goose. I haven't decided yet. And then I also got the NES Endings Compendium Volume 2 for $19.90, which reminds me of how my book progress is going. The last NES Endings book, once it was all said and done for Volume 1, was 86 through 89, and then 1990 is a thicker book. So that is how it goes. But let's get into this ranking. Alright, today's main topic is video game franchises ranked, and this is not just a singular company. This is this particular user, who is Load Pros W, choosing over 500 franchises to be represented on here. So this is going beyond Nintendo, beyond Capcom, beyond a singular company. I do have some thoughts about doing like Taito maybe, or like Konami in the future, but there's not too many other game companies that I feel like I would be able to successfully rank franchises. There's a whole bunch here that I just either haven't played or I barely scratched the surface of, like played like 10 minutes of something. So I just threw all of them into a separate list so they weren't cluttering up the bottom. There's a few in here I want to play. In fact, I actually moved one out of this list to the main section because I tested it out and I'm very intrigued by it. But there's a whole bunch of stuff that I either have no interest in, have played a tiny little bit of, and I was like, nope, or just haven't gotten around to yet. And that's okay. But what we'll do is we'll start down here in the bottom. The original version of this video that I recorded did the actual sorting, and it was 2.5 hours, and that just seems excessive. So I think what I'm going to do is, instead of submitting you to a mostly unedited 2 hours and 30 minutes with no music, we're going to try to do this a little bit more compressed. So this is the Bled tier that we're staring at right now, giving you some time to look at the majority of it. This one operates the opposite of the rest of the tiers, where the best games actually at the top and the worst games at the bottom. These are the franchises down here that I genuinely disdain, probably around like Momodora down. The ones that like the God of War games I've played, which is 1 and 2, were functionally fine, but very misogynistic, and I just don't care for that level of violence anymore. So I just kind of feel like the stuff that's around this very bottom, I just don't like at all, with Just Dance being the nadir of my gaming preferences. Tetris is solid. It is a delightful puzzle game. I just don't like it all that much. It doesn't click my brain the same way. Metal Gear Solid, I would probably like if Kojima wasn't so horny all the time. Mario and Luigi, I've played a good chunk of Superstar Saga, got to the final boss, got worn out by having A and B be separate but like brothers. It was a little bit too much for me to want to continue to process. Pokemon, I played a couple games. I just don't get into it, and I want to get into it. I just haven't had a game that actually has come out that hits all of my check boxes to actually try it. And Pokemon Stadium kind of requires Pokemon to work. The NSO ports without any compatibility are kind of a highlight of that. Mega Man Zero are too hard. That's basically why it's down here. I really like the art style, but I just don't want to get into crushingly hard games in this day and age. And then I'll just touch on Kingdom Hearts. I know why people love this series. I understand it. I just could not get into the gameplay of the first and don't have any interest in trying the other ones out. Probably my general dislike of Final Fantasy as a whole has been a factor in that. But Final Fantasy is not down in this tier. Welcome to the below average tier, where Final Fantasy is right there. So this works that the best is here. The ones that I care the least about are down here. Again, I'm not going to get too in-depth because, again, I don't want to spend hours of time talking about this stuff. But Mega Man X, I've only played the first game. So, and I have no interest in playing any of the others because they have been so genuinely on a decline from Mega Man X that I feel like it's diminishing returns to even try X2, for example. Mario Tennis represents all the sports games because they broke just tennis out for some reason. I feel like this is a fair place to put it. I feel like the series has been on a decline since the GameCube. Harvest Moon, I've tried a few times. I still think 64 has some merit out of the little I played of it, but that's about as far as I've gotten. I played a bit of Friends of Mineral Town and the Super Nintendo one as well, but I just haven't been hooked by farming games in general. Shantae, I really like Pirate's Curse, and the games have been on decline since that one, in my opinion, the two I played that followed. Samurai Showdown, I've just not explored enough. I've had the opportunity to. I think is it 2018 or 2019? The recent one is very good, but I got it on the Switch, which was not the right platform, because it's the neglected platform. And I guess I'm a little bit bitter about that, in hindsight. But I will probably pick it up on the PS4 at some point. And in Tekken, I finally like one, with Tekken 8. I've not liked any other Tekken that I've played, so that's why it's down here. But yeah, here's Final Fantasy. I've only played through Tactics Advance to completion. I almost beat Final Fantasy 1. I got pretty far in 6. I played 7, 12, a bit of 9, a bit of 5, a bit of 4. They just haven't hooked me. And a tiny bit of Tactics. And 6 is probably the closest to me actually getting hooked to 1. I played a tiny bit of 7 Remake, and I did like that. So at some point I will get into those. But I feel like this franchise is just not tooled for me the same way that a few other role-playing franchises are. A lot of Ubisoft stuff lives here, because I have no interest in ever playing any of them ever again. Elder Scrolls lives here. A series that I will probably never go back to. 6 would have to do an awful lot for me to try it again, and I don't foresee that happening. But yeah, here's just the rest of this particular tier without getting into much more depth. What franchises I like either one of, or I've tried a whole bunch, and while I get the appeal, they're just not clicking for me as much as I'd like, or there's just more experimentation that I need to do. Welcome to what I have called the mid category, which is not necessarily a bad thing here, because there are quite a few franchises I like. Mega Man, Kirby, Bloodstained, Bionic Commando, Devil May Cry, Banjo-Kazooie, Hebereke, Soul Calibur, Guilty Gear, Half-Life, Bioshock, Perfect Dark, Blaster Master, Mario Kart, Darius, Fighting Vipers, Darkstalkers, the Batman Arkham games, Alan Wake. I just played Alan Wake 2 for a little bit and really was enjoying it. So it got a pretty decent spot for maybe an hour of gameplay. Mega Man Legends, Baldur's Gate, Hades, Ys, Animal Crossing, so on. You can check out the rest of the list. Mega Man's not higher because I like the NES games, and this is classic Mega Man only. And I don't like 7 or 8 or 9. Haven't played 10. I like the tiny bit I played of 11, but I need to actually sit down and play it. Battle and Chase is not particularly good. The Power Fighters duo are solid, but not remarkable. The Wily Wars is fine. This is not the greatest remake I've played, but it's not bad. And then the Game Boy games are trash for me because they're too zoomed in. So my feelings on Mega Man is like, I love the world and the characters and all that, but it's really just like the NES games and maybe the Power Fighters that I like out of all of it, which is just wild to think about. Kirby, I wish I liked more. There's 3 games that I really like, which is Adventure, Superstar, and Epic Yarn. I'm looking forward to getting into Forgotten Lands soon. The problem I have with a lot of Kirby games is they overcomplicate the power stealing. I feel like Dreamland 3 and Dreamland 2 and 64 in particular just kind of soured me on Kirby because they made it too complicated. You have to have 2 powers that work, or the right animal buddy to work with your power to get through certain objectives, and I just don't care for that. Bloodstained, I really like Ritual of the Night, although the more that I look at what WayForward has done, the more I wish it was 2D instead of 3D, or they waited until they actually did like Yar's Rising. I like the 3D look of that game, and I wish that Bloodstained looked like that. And Curse of the Moon was fine. Curse of the Moon 2 I barely touched. So it's a series that I want to like more, but it just hasn't quite hooked me the same way that its sibling Castlevania has. Bionic Commando, I love the NES game. I really like the Game Boy original game. And Rearmed and the Game Boy Color Elite Forces are fine. And I have no interest really in playing anything else. Devil May Cry, I played 1 and 3. I like both of those. I want to play 5, and that's about where my interest lies. There's not any desire to play 2 or 4. I just bought 3 again on the Switch so I could try it with all the fancy new tech that they've added to Dante's moveset to allow him to switch styles instantly, which is like a game changer, honestly. But I haven't really wanted to deal with the Screamo yet. And then Banjo-Kazooie. The original game is fantastic to the point that it is above the below average. because the rest of the series has been in decline. But I think that the original game is one of the best 3D platformers I've played. And just I'm kind of just doing top row here because I don't want to get this video to be super long. But I like a lot of these, or I've tried them and I really understand why people like them, because I think that they are excellent. They're just not tiered to my preferences. That's like Baldur's Gate. Baldur's Gate 3 is a marvelous game. It is not tooled for my brain. Alright, for above average and excellent, I will get into more nitty-gritty because there's a lot less of them. Above average, I have the Super Mario platformers up this high at the very tip top. Could be excellent, but there's some games that I don't like. Super Mario Bros. Lost Levels and Mario Sunshine leap to mind. I think the new Super Mario Brothers games are very uninspired, visually at the very least, and that was really brought into focus with Super Mario Brothers Wonder. But generally speaking, these are superb. Mario 64, Mario Odyssey, Super Mario Brothers 3, Super Mario Brothers Wonder are all in my top 110. So I feel like they definitely deserve to be up at this tier and borderline excellent, but just not quite there. I'm a little surprised I put Phoenix right here, and I don't have the original videos now to really debate that. I only dislike one game that I've played, which was Phoenix Wright crossing over with Professor Layton. So I'm going to make an executive decision, and we're going to slide Ace Attorney here, and move on. Chrono is entirely Chrono Trigger, and since Chrono Trigger is my second favorite game of all time, it should be up really high. Someday I will play Radical Dreamers and Chrono Cross. I just haven't gotten around to it yet. King of Fighters. I really like this franchise, but I have games with it that I don't like, with not quite a burning passion to put it in the bottom 50, but quite a few that I just don't care for. I don't like 94 all that much. I didn't like 13. I'm never going to play 12 or 14, or the Maximum Impact games, or Neo Wave, because I just don't care. I think 11 is spectacular. I really like 15. I really like 2002. I like 99 / Evolution, and 97 and 98. But I don't feel the burning love that I do with Street Fighter, which is in the excellent tier. It's close, but just not quite there. Sly Cooper. I still need to play the original one, but I have played 2, 3, and 4, Thieves in Time. This is another franchise that has kind of been, like, it hit a high point and it's been slipping ever since, but I do think that 2 is a masterpiece in 3D platforming. I just dabbled briefly with the PS5 port, and it's really nice. It looks really nice. So I'm looking forward to playing through it again in the near future. 3 added too many characters. That's its biggest problem. There's too many play styles. I think that bouncing between 3 to 4 characters in 2 was solid, but bouncing between 9 to 10 is way too much. And the other issue with Thieves in Time is it wasn't my Sucker Punch, so it feels a little bit separate, and it also has too many character problems. It also ended on a cliffhanger that I don't know if Sony's ever going to get around to answering, which makes me sad. Silent Hill and Dead Space. Ooh, boy. I love both of those franchises, and they're both top-tier horror franchises for me. But they both have low points. For Silent Hill, I really like 1. I love 2 Remake against my every expectation, as well as the original and 3. I don't like The Room, and everything that's followed, I have not wanted to play. I did try Shattered Memories, and I really didn't like that. So, I do think it has a bit of an edge over Dead Space, although I just started the Dead Space remake, and it is hitting the same wild notes that Silent Hill 2 remake did, which is I didn't believe that they could pull it off, and yet they did, which makes me happy in the grand scheme of things. I would much rather be shocked that a remake is better than I gave it credit for than my actual anticipated disappointment being fulfilled. So it's definitely an improvement over the original Dead Space. I love 2. It's in my top 20. And I really like Extraction. 3 is terrible, and I do not recommend you play it. And then from there, we got Streets of Rage, one of my favorite beat-em-up franchises. And probably, I think it's the highest ranked out of all of them, yeah. Because it deserves it. I think 1, 2, and 4 are all excellent and show a steady increase. I haven't really dabbled with 3 a ton. I played a little bit of it, but I want to play Bare Knuckle 3. Because Streets of Rage 3 has some hardness added to it because they hated rentals. Contra, I'm so glad that I get to put it this high because I love the Famicom version of Contra even more than the NES one. I think Super C is fine. I think Contra 3 is great. I think Hardcore is excellent. I didn't play much else after that until Contra 4, which I thought was fine. And then I played Operation Galuga, which is great. Again, I wish it looked a little bit better, especially after playing Yars Rising. But I do think Contra deserves to be up here, and it's my favorite run-and-gun franchise. Shovel Knight is rarely missed. King of Cards is the only game that I haven't really touched. I love Shovel of Hope. I really like Plague of Shadows. I like Spectre of Torment. And the Showdown was cute, but I don't think I'll ever really get into it too much more than I have. And someday I'll play King of Cards. But King Knight is like my least favorite of all of the all of those guys. So Elevator Action is here because of Returns. Returns is splendid. The original arcade game's fine, and the Elevator Action Deluxe, I think is what they called the PS3 exclusive, is fine, but it's a throwback to the original and not using anything from Returns, which makes me sad. But Returns is a top 10 game for me, and deserves to be up this high, because that game is just wonderful. There's quite a few games in Elevator Action I haven't played, but in the grand scheme of things, I think it deserves to be up this high. Suikoden, I've played 1 and 2, love both. I'm looking forward to the remaster. I've dabbled a bit with 3 in Tactics, and they didn't hook me immediately, but I'm hoping that that will change when I'm in the mood for PS2 era role-playing games. Age of Empires is up here because of Age of Mythology, which is coming to PS5. I'm so excited. And Age of Empires 2 and 3 are totally fine, but they didn't hook me the same way Mythology did. Strider, I really love Strider 2014, and I like the rest of the series. The arcade game I like, the NES game I like begrudgingly, because it's so glitchy, and I like 2, but Strider 2014 is where it's at for me, and I love the character, so that's why it's up here. Sonic, I have missed most of the bad Sonic games. I've just skipped them. So I'm basically Genesis, Sega CD oriented when it comes to Sonic, plus the Dreamcast Adventures and Sonic Mania on modern platforms. And that's kind of what I played. And honestly, like Sonic Adventure 2 is my least favorite out of all of those, outside of like spin-offs like Sonic Spinball and Sonic 3D whatever they called that game, Flicky's Island. But I think that this series is what I have played of it deserves to be above average, despite the fact that if we were to actually evaluate it with all of the games, it probably would be below average. Metal Slug, I really like 1, 2, I love X and 3, and then the series just kind of declines a bit, but not terribly, with 4, 5, and 6 in advance. So I think it deserves to be up here. Fatal Fury, Mark of the Wolves is one of my favorite games. City of the Wolves is one of my most anticipated 2025 games. And I do like the Real Bout series quite a bit. So this is a series that has shown upward trajectory and could climb higher when City of the Wolves comes out. Virtua Fighter, I like this series a lot. I like 1 and 2 and 3 and 5. I really like 3, but I really do like the series, and I'm looking forward to seeing what they are doing with the new one. Rival Schools, this is entirely Project Justice based, and Project Justice is that strong. It's still in my 110. It's the last game currently on it at the moment, but I may change my mind when I get a chance to replay it in May, which I'm very excited about. I love the art style. The characters are fun. The gameplay is fun. It's a great game. And I want to play the original Rival Schools at some point if Capcom deems it possible. And then Paper Mario is based basically on the first 2 games. I haven't played anything past Thousand Year Door. And I do have Super Paper Mario, which I do want to try at some point. But just haven't tried it out yet. Alright, the excellent tier is here. And we've got so many games that I love up here. I have given Castlevania the slight edge because I reviewed all of these games when I did the initial list, and Castlevania has fewer misses for me. Haunted Castle is the worst Castlevania game. And it's kind of Castlevania adjacent. It's not Castlevania Haunted Castle. It's Simon Belmont, but it's very distinctive and separated. And I'm looking forward to trying out the remake to see how much better it is. But when I think about the other mainline Castlevania games I've played, the Adventure and Legends are not great. Dracula X on the Super Nintendo is not great. And outside of the Lord of Shadows series being something I absolutely do not want to touch, I'm trying to actually get physical versions of the entire series outside of Lords of Shadow within the realm of cost, because getting Legends boxed is wild. But I do love Castlevania a lot. Aria of Sorrow is my favorite. Symphony of the Night is right behind it. I love the original. I love Rondo of Blood. I love Portrait of Ruin, Order of Ecclesia. Super Castlevania 4, Bloodlines, Dracula's Curse, preferably the Famicom version. They're all excellent games. And the series has not been afraid of experimenting either, which I greatly appreciate. So that's why it's number 1. Metroid's number 2, and it's a very close race, because Super Metroid is my favorite game of all time, and then Dread is in my top 20, so you would think that just on the strength of those, plus Metroid Zero Mission being up there, and Metroid Prime being up there. I also really like Echoes. I like the Game Boy Return of Samus. Trying to remember what else. But that's, I think, kind of where we start, and the original NES Metroid's fine. When we start getting into the games I don't like, I think that Other M, a game that I refuse to acknowledge, is there. Fusion was a bit of a misfire. Corruption, I hate. It's one of my least favorite games of all time. I think Samus Returns was kind of mishandled in terms of a remake. The enemy spawn rate just killed that for me in terms of ever wanting to replay it. So I feel like there's more core games that I have issues with Metroid than I do with Castlevania. And there's also less of them in the grand scheme of things. So the ratio is just a little bit against it. But I still love Metroid. I love Samus. I love the world of Metroid. I love everything about it beyond some of the games. And Adam. I hate Adam. Adam can go die. Super Smash Brothers is third. And genuinely outside of, I think, a couple miscalculations with Brawl, with its tripping, and splitting 3DS and Wii U into two separate games, and the compromises that had to be made in order to do that, I just think this series has been solid from start to finish. The original game has its novelty, even to this day. Melee was revolutionary in a lot of ways, and is still very popular competitively. I like the additions to Brawl, other than the tripping. And that's when we started getting multiple composers joining the soundtracks, and getting like these huge, incredible like soundscapes with each game that just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And then with Wii U and 3DS, they started adding more third parties beyond Snake and Sonic, like Mega Man, a character that I really like. And they brought in characters that you just wouldn't expect, like Cloud and Bayonetta. So I just love Smash, and Ultimate is one of my absolute favorite games. It's my favorite fighting game. It probably should be higher than it is, honestly, on my list. I'll have to reevaluate that in a few months. But I love Smash. I really do. And if it's not obvious by my video content on this channel, I don't know what to say. Portal. 2 games, both excellent. I wish there were more. And yet, at the same time, would Valve be able to continue the quality if they did a third one? I don't know. But I do love Portal and Portal 2. So they are definitely deserving to be up this high on this list. The Capcom Versus games, which is all of them. So SNK, Marvel, Tatsunoko. Those are the ones I played. Tekken I have not played, so it's kind of excluded from this discussion. But I do love practically all of those, to some extent. Capcom vs. SNK 2 is my second favorite fighting game of all time. Marvel vs. Capcom 2 is up there. Tatsunoko vs. Capcom is excellent. I like a lot of the Marvel games that I didn't list. So it's just great. They're just great games all the way around. I love the crossing over of Capcom and other properties. I want more of it, please. Splatoon. I love 1 and 2 and 3 for their incredible world building, their awesome character designs. They're fun to play. That's the only multiplayer game that I actually like playing. I do feel that 3 lost a bit of my interest. The maps are designed differently than they were in 1 and 2, and they're less engaging for me. And side order really did not work for me at all. So I'm hoping that with the inevitable 4 on the Switch 2, that it finds its footing a bit more and is a bit more Splatoon 1-2 like. Alright, I'm running out of time to record this in one quick swoop, so I'm going to run through the rest very quickly. Street Fighter. I love this franchise, but I lost my love for it with Street Fighter 4. And really, it took Street Fighter 6 to win me back, and I love Street Fighter 6. It's my favorite Street Fighter game. But there was that period where I had no interest in it at all. I hated the art style. I hated how it played. I'm so thankful that 6 has brought me back in a huge way. Fire Emblem. I love Three Houses. It's in my top 5 games of all time. Three Hopes is also in my top 110, along with Echoes and what is known here as Blazing Blade, the second GBA game. I've liked, and Awakening was, I don't remember, I think Awakening left the list, but it was on my list. I do like Awakening a lot. I do like Path of Radiance, and I look forward to being able to play it again. I dislike Fates a lot. I dislike Shadow Dragon, the remake, a lot. So that's and Engage. Oh man, Engage. I'm so frustrated about because I love what they did with the combat and the gameplay. I hate what they did with the narrative. There's so many characters in there that deserve to be in a better game, and they're not. They're in Engage. And it makes me sad because I don't want to play it again. I really do not. The DLC killed it for me. I might have been okay if I didn't play the DLC, which makes me really bummed because there's a lot to like about Engage, but there's a lot to not like about it too. XCOM. If I didn't have 3 houses so high, XCOM would be ahead of Fire Emblem. I'm not gonna lie. I've loved the Firaxis games, at least the 4 that I've played. The Bureau was a misfire, but I don't think Firaxis did that one. I don't remember. But I love Enemy Unknown. I love Enemy Within even more. XCOM 2 is fantastic. I love XCOM 2 War of the Chosen. Love those games so much. But they don't have the narrative strength that Fire Emblem does. And while I do love them, XCOM 2 War of the Chosen is a top 20 game at the moment. It is not a top 10. So, Dragon Quest. I adore a lot about this franchise. I'm just going to be completely blunt and drop an F-bomb. Fuck Sugiyama and his horrid beliefs. It really makes listening to Dragon Quest music difficult because I know who made it. But the games themselves, I really like 4. I love 5. I love 8. I love 9. I like 11. What I played of it, I need to get back into it. I need to play more of 3. I've only dabbled with the Game Boy Color one, but I've got the remake and I'm excited to play it. I've played through most of, if not beat 1, which is fine. I haven't really touched 6 or 7. Couldn't play 10. And I haven't really played 2. So that's basically my overview. Plus, there's some good spin-offs. I think Rocket Slam is a wonderful DS game. And I think Builders 2 was fun, what little I played of it. So I really like this series. But it probably would be higher if it wasn't for the music, honestly. Zelda. If I didn't disdain Zelda 2 and Skyward Sword so much, it'd probably be higher. But both of those are pretty bottom 50, and Zelda 2 is pretty high. But I do love the Breath of the Wild. I do love Tears of the Kingdom, although I do think Tears of the Kingdom got a little bit too into its own head with mechanics to try to differentiate itself, and lost some story beats that I think were important to actually maintain between 2 games that are in the same Connect universe. I like Twilight Princess. I love the original NES game. I like Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask. I like Link to the Past. I love Link Between Worlds. Echoes of Wisdom is good. I wish it didn't have so much Link in it. I do love this franchise a lot, and it's a very important one to me. I just have some issues. Oh, I like Wind Waker too. There's so many of them that I forget. Link's Awakening on the Game Boy as well. Four Swords Adventures. See, they're all just rushing into my head now that I'm trying to wrap this up. On the whole, I really like this franchise, but there's some misfires and some mechanical stuff in the games that hold it back from being higher. Resident Evil. If 6 didn't exist, this would be higher. Because 6 is really what's pinning it to being near at the bottom of the excellent list. That game really bummed me out. I also have issues with 5. With its latent racism and just overdoing the action parts. But I do love a lot of the series. I love 2 in both its forms. I love 4 in both its forms. Classic 2 and 4 are still favorite games, even though they're not my top 110 anymore. I love the remake of Resident Evil a lot now. I really liked Village, although I don't like Ethan all that much. I like Code Veronica more than most people. I think 3, Nemesis, is fine. The remake really was a misfire, though. And I think that's most of them. It's really based on the strength of Resident Evil 4 that the series is where it's at. But because 6 really disappointed me, and I didn't care much for Revelations 1 or 2, what little I played of those. I never played the Outbreaks and the silly multiplayer stuff I never tried. Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney. Now up in Excellent. I'm not entirely sure why I dumped it down in above average. Maybe because I felt like there were some games I needed to play. But I do think that the 6 mainline games are good to excellent. I love Apollo Justice. I really like Spirit of Justice. The original trilogy has some weak points for sure, and I think that Dawn of Destiny, Dual Destinies, I have to think about what it was called, was kind of that in-between state of where, unfortunately, Justice for All is, where there's just cases that I don't care for in it. Even though I do like Athena a lot. They really didn't know what to do with Apollo in 5 and 6, though, did they? I also like the original Investigations. I'm looking forward to playing 2, and I'm looking forward to playing the great Ace Attorney Chronicle games at some point. But I really do like the series. I love the characters. I love the silliness. They're great. And last but not least, surprisingly, perhaps, is International Superstar Soccer. Not counting Pro Evolution Soccer or eFootball, which is Konami's latest attempt of continuing the soccer franchise. I love the N64 International Superstar Soccer games. 64 was great. 98's even better. I want to get 2000 so bad, just to see if it's better than 98. But these are the best sports games that I've ever played, period. And out of the 2 that I've tried, they don't miss. And I'm actually afraid to get into PES or anything later because what if they messed it up? Then this would have to drop down into above average. Alright, well, that ended up being 40 minutes versus 2.5 hours, which I think is a little bit more reasonable of a ask of listening time. Alright, we got through it. We got through that massive list of franchises, and now you kind of know what my favorites are. Which ones that I really like and which ones I really don't. For the rest of March, we'll be taking a little break from video content. I'm desperately trying to get back into books, but gotta admit, the state of the world at present is not helping. So I'm expressing my creativity in other ways, but I'm hoping that in the next couple months, I'll get some really good motivation to get Femtendo 87 on its way, get started on the early history of women in video games as well. And we'll start rolling out some more Levels Plus books. It's been a little while. But another thing that I do want to address is when we get back into videos, which will be around Switch 2 time, I'm going to be trying to not do list upon list upon list. And it's really easy to get into a bunch of lists. I already have a good 15 to 20 more that I could do because I've set them up. But we'll try to how do I want to phrase this? We will try to splice them into more review-based content or opinion-based content, and not just list-based content, as we move into more 2025. So just wanting to be transparent about the process. So this will be the last video until probably the weekend before the Switch 2 comes out. We'll probably have some speculation at that point. And then we'll react, and then we'll have lots to say, I'm sure. So, have a wonderful rest of your March. Happy spring and all of those good things. And we will see you in a few weeks' time. Take care, friends. They added more third parties beyond just Snake and Shadow. Or Shadow, Sonic. Wow.